What is going on, everybody? It's Zach Michael here. Today, we are going to be making an orchestral sample from scratch. I'm going to kind of explain my process, how I create orchestral sounding loops and samples. And I've made these a lot over the years and done a bunch of different things in that realm of music. But I'm going to teach you guys the basics because honestly, orchestral stuff can get really complex, but also there's a lot of ways to make full sounding orchestras that aren't terribly complex. I feel like a lot of producers kind of feel like it's impossible to create this genre of music, when in reality a lot of it comes down to some things such as sound selection. So that's what we're going to get started here with. The first thing I do a lot of times is try to find like a full sounding orchestral patch that I can use as a foundation for my sample. I like this Dark and Moody String Orchestra. It's one of my favorites, but there's a couple other good ones in Omnisphere as well, and I've even made my own that are in some of my banks as well, which you can purchase on my site if you want the orchestral patches that I've created over the years. So first I'm going to pick a scale, and today's sample we're going to make in the scale of F minor. So I just like to load that up. And the first thing I do is figure out my bass notes. Now I try to keep things pretty simple when it comes to orchestral chords. I like to leave a lot of room for other elements. So with these bass chords, I'm not going to do too much craziness beyond just really simple chords like this. And I like the little tension that this gives here because I'm only going up by 1/2 step for each of these. You just go up by a step, and that's kind of how you create that tension. We're just going to pull that down in the mixer for now, but we're not going to only use Omnisphere today. We're also going to use SRX Orchestra and just a bunch of different like orchestral plugins just to kind of showcase some of the ones I use. Next, we're going to go through this and just try to find another sound that like inspires me. We could add a cello. So we're going to take the top notes of the chords, copy those over. Of course, we're going to make our cello have a lot more going on than just that, because this is going to be like our first top line element. Something like that. Just randomize the velocities. We're just going to turn that down for now. Again, we're going to process this and get this to sound really, really good later on. But for now, we're just kind of laying down the foundation. Next, I'm going to open up Spitfire Audio's Labs, which is actually a free VST. So all these banks, these strings, orchestras, you can get these all for free from their site. So if you don't know where to start and you don't have the money to buy some expensive patches, well, you can always get started with these. So we're going to copy the chords and raise those up an octave. And we're going to go ahead and add a little bit more variation as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the notes here from our cello that happen on the second bar of each chord. We're going to paste these in here, go ahead and stretch them, and then raise them an octave. This sound here, very like ambient kind of string sound in the background. As you can see, that we already are starting to have a more full sounding orchestra. We really only have like 3 layers here. Next, I'm just going to take this down like a couple BPMs at like 138. That's pretty good. I'm going to mute the cello. I'm out of arcade because now I want to try to find like another orchestral element for like a switch up or just to kind of make things sound bigger. And I like using arcade for this, but there's tons of other ways, and you could even make something yourself. But I'm just trying to showcase different things, and there's this bank within arcade and actually with Spitfire Audio that has like tons of really sick ideas. So I'm just going to kind of run through these. I like this, but I want it to happen at half the speed. So we're just going to slow that. Alright, so now let's get started on the mix. So with this main sound. I'm just going to cut out a tiny bit of the lows. I do want there to be lows in the actual sample, but some of these lows just kind of muddy up a mix. So I'm just going to take out a little bit of those and add a little bit of highs, even though there's not really much highs on this main pad kind of string sound. And that's kind of by design. I usually keep that bass chord progression generally not so much in the high frequencies, and that's so that way the other elements that I add can kind of stick out. Like for instance, this cello, which is going to need some reverb. So we're going to open up this towel reverb here. We're going to put a lot of reverb on that. Next we got this sound here. And again, take out some of those lows. And just kind of do the same kind of processing. Like throw some reverb. Do that. Nothing crazy. You know, the mix hasn't been crazy, but again, like if the raw ideas you put into the DAW and what melodies you're playing and what sounds we're choosing sound good, you don't need to do too much processing. Now let's go ahead and process this. So I want it to sound a little darker, so I'm going to take off some of the highs. Like that. Gonna open up the reverb as well, but I'm gonna turn this down. I don't want it to be too high. Another thing you can do is actually play with these within Arcade. So like there's a vibrato, ambience. Like if I turn the vibrato all the way up, I'm not gonna turn it all the way up, but I'll put it on a little bit like that. And now just like that, we kind of have like our main sounds all ready to go. So now all you got to do is, before I go ahead and arrange, I like to render out each section. This is so none of my reverbs bleeding into each other. And also, like when you have some orchestral patches, they'll have really long releases. So like after you click a note, it will sustain for a really long period of time. And I don't want that to happen when I create the different sections of the loop, because the producer might want to chop it up or use different sections, and it's going to kind of sound weird. So I like to just render everything out. And then I just kind of go ahead and arrange everything. Have a section with everything. Section with some less elements. Even more less elements here where I just kind of swap through. And then I put all the stems at the end. And just like that, that's kind of how I create most of my orchestral stuff. So if you guys enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and check out elizabethrecords.net. Thank you so much for watching. Head on over to elizabethrecords.net if you'd like to support me. You can purchase VST expansion banks, drum kits, loop kits, and MIDI kits that'll level up your production there.